All right, we're back on the final part three. I don't know what. Every time we start a podcast, where I'm just like, all right, I like wave my hands in the air like I'm talking on stage.
Like we're on camera.
Yeah, I'm like doing a bit of a rotor where it's just like starting a pack opening. And he just puts his hands up in the air. Um, but yeah, we're doing the sequel trilogy and sequel films, or technically prequel films, Solo and Rogue One. So yeah, we'll kick it off quick. We'll just go. We won't do like the whole little summary thing. We'll just start off with the Force Awakens. What
How
did
have
you
you done
think?
this 3 times in a row?
My name's Jimmy.
How?
That's Sean. It's
Every
literally just
time.
because we've done it.
Every
Like,
time.
look, I've got a lot of things to admit. It's hard hosting a podcast when you haven't done it for a very long time. There's a lot of things to have in your head. You need to know how to make a podcast flow. I'm trying, okay? This is the one thing I forget every time, which is to introduce us. But anyway, we've done that. No one cares. Force Awakens, that movie. I want to argue for
A New
how,
Hope Part 2.
yeah,
Sorry, name it correctly, come on.
A New Hope
It's A New
Part
Hope
2.
Part 2.
I think it's
New
better
Hope,
than
A New Hope Reloaded.
I think it's better than A New Hope.
Too Hope, Too Furious. Whatever you want to call it.
A New Hope 2 Electric Boogaloo. Um, yeah. It is it's not my favorite of the trilogy, but I do think it's better than A New Hope, or at least on par. And I'm only saying that because visually it's a better movie. Like, if you had the visuals of Force Awakens with A New Hope, but the characters, like, if the characters were swapped, different story. But uh, it's just a hard one to. I want to say it's better. Now I'm thinking about it. I don't know if it is. Like, the I think Han Solo's death was handled better than Obi-Wan Kenobi's death, which is why I'd put it higher. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a tough one because, in my mind, it's I feel like they tried to play it safe with the film, but it didn't work in the eyes of everyone who watched it
Mm-hmm.
because there were two. I think this is a whole with this trilogy is very much. I think it's a thing as a whole is that they had 2 options and they didn't do either of those options. They went right on the middle of those 2 options, which is you either stick with a story based on the original characters, or you were to do a trilogy that completely moved away from them. And I think in their heads they went, well, there's going to be half the people who want each one, so let's meet in the middle and try and please everyone. And I think by doing that, they then pleased very few people
Yeah. Yeah.
because they did. Obviously, they brought in the new characters, but still kept the story very heavily based on the old ones. And I think that my main problem is they focused on them too much.
Well, it's like we said when we were talking, I think original trilogy, where we were like, they introduced these characters like Finn and stuff like that, and then we're like, oh, he's a main character, he's one of the two main characters, but he wasn't. Ray was the main character. Kylo Ren was a main character. He was a side character. He did a shit side story in the second movie with the casino
And
thing,
apart from that, didn't do much else.
and then didn't do anything. There's so much wasted potential. They could have
So
done
the
a
problem they had,
whole, like,
the,
former clone troop, not clone trooper, stormtrooper, becomes a Jedi or something. They could have done something like that, but no, yeah.
so I think the problem they just had is that they brought in the same number of new characters who were in the original films, whilst also keeping 3 characters from the original one. So they had too many people that they needed to try and fit in a story and have enough screen time and lines that just some of the characters just missed out, and they didn't get what they deserved from it because there were too many people involved.
We'll also...
Not that I'm saying they should have had a mass exodus of all the old characters early on and got rid of them, but yeah.
Well, we'll also say that this was the point when we realised Disney didn't give a fuck about the Legends brand, because they completely changed, like, Luke's future, where he was married and had kids and stuff, all of this stuff. None of that happened in this. None of it, unless they could easily retcon it and say Luke hid his family away after the like the stuff with Kylo Ren. Like, they could easily do stuff like that, but no, they're not going to. So they ruined Luke Skywalker in these movies. I'm not saying it was terrible. Like, he wasn't terrible. He had some good moments in the second film, but he also had, like, they could have done so much more, and they just The Last Jedi just frustrates me because it's just such a boring movie. Like, nothing happens, and the significant stuff that does happen sucks. Like, did Luke need to just disappear and, well, basically die? Did a lot of things have to happen, you know? But we're still on Force Awakens, but yeah. Force Awakens, the best moment in that movie is pretty much most of the stuff on Starkiller Base. For me, it's the stuff that sticks out. So Han Solo's death, the fight with Kylo Ren, after that, just stuff like that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think definitely later on in the film are the best parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how they have, it is effectively the same story as New Hope, which I think they did a bit too much. I did like the fact that they were attempting at least to have these callbacks to the original films.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have worked really well had they have not gone too hard on them. I think they went a bit too full on by literally mirroring copying the story.
Yeah.
And they should have instead just done smaller hints to it. Like with that, because obviously Star Wars are known for there's certain things they have in the films. They always have I have a bad feeling about this. They always have a Wilhelm scream somewhere. These little things. I think they should have kept them as smaller, recurring things like that, as opposed to here's the story again.
Yeah.
And obviously it's just a continuation of the original trilogy of here's a weapon you're scared of. Here's a bigger weapon you're scared of. Here's an even bigger weapon you're scared of.
Here's the biggest weapon we've ever done.
But
it's
literally
a planet.
Instead of making having a sword, they've just converted a planet.
Yeah.
It's just like we're just getting bigger. And it's like,
which is cool. Which is, like I've discussed before, it's cool to know. Now we know the backstory of it. It's cool, but did they need to do it again? Did they need to do the same plot?
I just felt that I just would have hoped they would have been a bit more creative.
Yeah, like I said, I don't hate The Force Awakens. In fact, I said I liked it.
It's in no way the worst film there isn't in all of Star Wars.
No, it's like, I think it's on par with A New Hope, and I'm only saying that because there are certain things that, like, visually it's a better film, and while I don't think the characters are better, I think the way characters were handled in terms of, like, death scenes and stuff were better than A New Hope, which is why I'll put it on par. I won't say it's better now. I've changed my mind. It's not better. It's just on par as a movie, because I'm taking into account when A New Hope came out, and it's definitely on par. I think we're pretty much done with that. So, The Last Jedi, the casino shit was, as we just said, shit. Nothing really substantial happened in the movie, other than Snoke being killed. That's it. And in a way, that was just shit as well, because they built up this villain only to be killed off out of nothing, and then you find out he's literally just a failed clone of Palpatine. Woo. They could have done so much stuff. They could have, instead of Palpatine coming back, they could have made a story about how Darth Plagueis survived Palpatine's attempt at murder on him. They could have done so many things, but no. They killed off Snoke, and then later on they brought back Palpatine in a lackluster reveal, which was the movie started and everyone heard a voice of Palpatine in the opening scroll. Like, Last Jedi sucks. Can we agree?
Yeah, I think it's just that for me, it's a case of I liked the idea they were going with. I just really didn't like how they executed it.
Yeah. It's the
But
only Star Wars movie I've nearly fallen asleep to. Let's say that.
I liked how they had the main characters and they were splitting them up so they had their own story and their own development. I just think the story and development they did with the characters just were not
It
good.
was poor. It's poor storytelling. It was weird
Well,
because
sorry, I
yeah.
will actually change that. I think Rey's is good. Rey and Kylo. I personally, I like the whole dyad in the Force story. How they have this special connection.
Oh yeah,
They
I don't know why
they
people hated that.
they ruined it in the final film. I like it apart from the fact they made him kiss in the end of the final film. That was
Yeah,
unnecessary,
yeah. There's
personally.
something else I
But
hate about
I
that part.
liked I like this concept of them being this same force energy, which obviously then comes back to what I said in the first episode of this, of the scene with the back-to-back scenes of them fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think that works really well. And it's quite a cool concept that, see, before you find out that they are that, it hints at it earlier on that they are fighting back to back, that they are fighting as one because they are one.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think again it's something they probably could have done a bit more of sooner.
Yeah, I agree.
And then because of that, then nobody else in the film really gets anything on that level, and yeah, they just get lost a bit.
The
The other
problem,
characters, they don't really get much development.
yeah, the problem with The Last Jedi is a problem with this whole trilogy, which was they went into the movies just writing one movie and then moving on to the next. They didn't plan it. They didn't know where they were going. They had change of directors who had different visions, and you're like, they should have kept J.J. Abrams on for the whole series. They shouldn't have swapped out. I'm not saying. I don't think Rian Johnson is as bad as everyone says. But I don't think he was the right fit for this Star Wars movie. If he maybe started the trilogy, if like he started with The Force Awakens and had his own story set out, maybe. But no, it's just so disjointed. There's like the side plots were terrible. Some of the character development was terrible. Like they started some good stuff in The Force Awakens. Who's Rey's parents? And that just went out the window in the second one. And then they tried to salvage it in the third one to lackluster, response. And we'll just we'll move on to Rise of Skywalker anyway.
So
Because
I just think there wasn't enough continuity between the films.
yeah,
There was no flow from one to another. That it kind of mirrors the original trilogy of the first film was a complete story, and the next two flowed on from another, but it just wasn't done as well,
yeah.
or nowhere near as well. And that is just between the second and the third film in that trilogy, there's just this really weird hard cut that just doesn't work.
What's it?
And
Rise
it's
of
almost as if they didn't think of where they were going with the end of the story before they started.
yeah. Well, Rise of Skywalker literally starts with Kylo Ren trying to find what was it the little I forgot what it was called, but the thing to try and find Palpatine. And you're like, if
The
you
Sith Wayfinder.
yeah, if you hadn't have watched the trailers or read the opening scroll when the movie came down, you wouldn't know that Palpatine was back, and it would have been so lackluster. Like they showed nothing of it. That it would have been good if Last Jedi ended with Palpatine coming over like this thing, and you heard his laugh or something. That would have made The Last Jedi way better, because people would have been like, I'm so excited to see what they do in Rise of Skywalker now. But they didn't do that.
Well, there's two. I think either way, you either put Palpatine at the end of The Last Jedi, or you don't include him in the trailers and in the opening scroll of the last film, and you have it as a big reveal at the start of that film of just him finding him.
Yeah.
So instead of having there's a call from the Emperor, it's literally just him finding the Sith Wayfinder, him following it, and then oh my god, it's Palpatine,
Oh my god, no one saw this coming,
and
even though
actually
we spoiled
having his face as the reveal, as opposed to just finding out beforehand. It's like, oh yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, and it's like they never really went into detail about the whoever brought him back. I forgot who it was, like the cult that brought him back or whatever. Nothing is said about them. They're just there, and then they die at the end because a building falls on them. Whoa, whoa. That was really cool. I will say this has the best action out of the sequel movies, and I'm including
So
Solo, Rogue One.
this is why I like it, because it's kind of what I
Oh
want
no, I
from a
like
Star
the
Wars
movie.
film. Of that, I want lightsaber fights. I want action,
Mm-hmm.
and every single place they go to has this, because it is a lot of a cat and mouse of Kylo is able to find Rey because of this connection they have. He's able just to chase her down, and they come across so often that they have these fights. That it just makes it quite interesting. Is what you want in a Star Wars. You want big lightsaber fights.
Yep, yep. No, I agree, and in my opinion, it's out of the trilogy, it's the best one. Um, like it just because of the action and because it was its own thing. Like the Force Awakens was good, but it wasn't its own original story. Rise of Skywalker was, and I'm not saying it's the greatest story because I've just ragged on it, but that's the fault of the trilogy itself. And I think J.J. Abrams did his best to salvage a movie that was ruined. Salvage a series that was ruined by a disjointed second act. So, you know, it was good for what it was, and it's one of the visually and just one of the better looking and have the best action maybe in any Star Wars movie, like overall. Maybe it's not my favorite scene. None of them are my favorite scenes, but overall, the amount of scenes there are had some of the better fight scenes. Yeah, like I don't. Do you have anything else to say on Rise of Skywalker?
I think just with you on the back of your fighting thing, also that we mentioned in the Clone Wars. Obviously, there's the two fight scenes in there, the arena, and then the one following
Mm-hmm.
with Count Dooku. Is that the Count Dooku one kind of gets overshadowed, where I don't feel like any of the action in this film overshadows each other.
Yeah.
That they're all memorable in their own ways. Um that because there isn't, obviously you can say the end one where Palpatine's defeat is the main fight. But to us that's probably the fight with the least action in,
Yeah.
which I think works quite well, because then you have the big plot point, but it's not overshadowed by the flashing lights and the fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you get that in the earlier ones that build them up more, so they're kind of more even.
The biggest problem with this movie isn't that it was terrible. It was that it wasn't what we wanted. It was different to what we wanted, and that's a good and a bad thing in a way. Um,
Well, I think it was just let down by the poor writing of the second one.
yeah, yeah,
Of
no,
the
that's what I mean. People wanted more from the second
Yeah,
and the third movie. They wanted to build on what Force Awakens was, because people were already a bit shaky after Force Awakens, but everyone was like, okay, they could still do some stuff with this. And then Last Jedi just took that energy out of everyone. And
and then it was kind of, they had to effectively use the last one as a salvage effort
yeah,
instead of actually doing what they wanted to do. It was a case of, we have to try and do something to try and save this trilogy because
and I think
it's in a shit place.
I think JJ Abrams did a good job. I don't think, but I don't think it was the job that everyone wanted. And you can't please everyone. But Disney should have done better. Uh, but I think that's pretty much all we can say on them. We'll have a quick little fall on Solo and Rogue One. So we'll start with Solo. It was a good movie for me, but it was so different. Like it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
I agree
feel
with
that
that.
way. Like it,
Yeah,
it had Star Wars elements, had
but
Star Wars characters, but it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. And
I don't know. Is that purely because
that's not
there
a bad
aren't
thing, by the way.
Force users?
Yeah. Maybe it's the only one without Force users, isn't it? Unless you count Maul's appearance. But you know,
Yeah.
like it
Well, obviously he doesn't really show any Force
like
abilities in
it
it.
was a tease that makes you want more, but we're not getting more. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
So if they'd then after that film like, announced they were going to do, um, let's say a TV series with Emilia Clarke's character with Darth Maul,
mhm.
then I think it would have worked really well because it would have got you excited for that with that ending. But nothing's really come from it.
I assume we are gonna get more because
I'd
like it's a
like to
weird
think
way
so,
to
but I feel
end
like
it.
if they're going to, they would have said something by now
I don't know.
instead of
The
announcing
virus
these
and stuff
other.
has put stuff like postponed a lot of things because I know the Obi-Wan stuff got postponed because of that. But yeah, it was a good movie. It's not my favorite, but it was different. It didn't feel like a Star Wars movie, but that's a good thing. It had variety. It wasn't the same. It wasn't like A New Hope and Force Awakens, which were the same movie. It was its own thing. But the movie
There
I
is the one major issue with the film though,
gone.
and that is that how Han gets his name.
Oh yeah,
It's awful
yeah. I
that
mean,
just because he was by himself, he gets the name Solo. It's just they could have they could have just had that as his family name, and there would have been no issue whatsoever. But I
yeah,
think it was just I think
they tried to
this
be
fell
cool
in the
with it.
same category of the newer trilogy, where there's a lot of forced comedy.
Well, no,
That
they tried to Jon Snow it, you know, because Snow is the bastard name, and they were like, we should do something like that with Han Solo.
well,
That's what they
yeah,
tried
but I
to
think
do.
it is also just a case of because I think it's a problem with the new trilogy as well is that the original ones had these nice little comedic moments that I think they tried to do again, but
Hmm.
they just didn't work.
Yeah,
They
nothing
feel
quite
too
like it.
forced.
I can't say the prequel stuff had good comedy, but most of that came from like Obi-Wan.
It was so it was. I feel like in those ones, the comedy didn't actually come from the script. It come from how just what people
Yeah,
took certain scenes
like
how they were. It
the
was the memes
delivery
more
of
than the actual
Anakin's
joke.
lines and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not a bad movie, but it has some bad things in it. But we'll talk on the better one, which is Rogue One, which has my favorite Star Wars scene ever. Which we will get to. But I like the whole tragic story of there's all these characters and pretty much 90% of them are dead by the end of the movie. There was who did Forrest Whitaker's character. He's he's a recurring character in a lot of Star Wars stuff. He's in the games, he's in the shows, TV shows. Um, like it's just it's very cool to see some characters like this. The Darth Vader scene is my favorite scene in any Star Wars, and it makes this is the scene that makes me want a Darth Vader movie or TV show. I just want to see him decimate people, like, and you get to see glimpses of it in other stuff. Like, I haven't seen Clone Wars, so I assume there's stuff in there. I mean, I haven't finished it, so I assume there is stuff later on. I know there's stuff in Rebels. There's a whole thing in Star Wars Jedi. I keep coming back to that, but it's just such a. It has more lore in it than most other Star Wars things. Like, there's a whole spoiler alert. There's a whole section near the end of the game that involves Darth Vader, which is really cool and makes you think, holy shit, you know. And I want more of that in Star Wars, and we're not getting it. But it was really nice to have this glimpse of Vader and the whole like thing with Leia showing up, even though it was obviously a CGI render. But yeah, it's. I would honestly say, um, do I say it's my favorite one? I don't know. I will say it's for the entire last third of that movie. It's my favorite of the sequel films, including the trilogy and Solo as well.
So I think it also gains from the point we made on Revenge of the Sith of it's a story where the people get what they want, but not by winning.
Yeah.
That they get the plans, they manage to get them out, but the characters in doing that all die, and you don't get a happy ending from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you get a New Hope.
Well, the happy ending comes in in episode 4. But in that single film, you don't get the happy ending of we did it, we survived, we've defeated them.
And that's the type of movie I like. So yeah. Like I like a payoff, like a movie after, like what A New Hope is, where we get a happier ending. But I like when movies are just like, well, shit, okay, all the characters are dead, or well, this ended on a bad note, which is why a lot of the middle movies are my favorite. And is why Last Jedi was such a disappointment, because the whole movie could have been cut out and you wouldn't have lost really much. You could have had like a 10-minute sequence of the whole Snoke scene with Rey and Kylo Ren, and that would have been it. That's all you really needed from that movie. But yeah, what's your favourite of the sequel trilogy or the sequel movies?
I do really like The Rise of Skywalker, but it does have its issues.
Yeah.
Obviously, I like it for the action and everything, so I think it's just as a single film, I think it's quite enjoyable to watch if you don't worry too much about the story.
Yeah.
And there are bits that let down, like the Rey and Kylo kiss. I don't like that.
Oh, that's the one thing I was going to say. Sorry, I need to interrupt you here. The kiss, I didn't really care for, but something I really like. I don't know, a couple months ago, I was just sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder what's going to happen if they're going to make a Kylo Ren series or something. And then I remembered he dies at the end of the movie, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so unmemorable of a death that I completely forgot about it. And I was like, they never should have killed him off. He had this whole redemption arc. Why did he have to die? They shouldn't have done the love aspect, but they should have done a whole, maybe Kylo Ren he redeemed himself and then he started his own like Jedi school, picked up from where Luke left off. He should have become the Luke Skywalker. He should have made up for his ways, and he shouldn't have died. I don't get it. It's one of the things that I hate the most in the movie, and I forgot to mention it.
I took it differently from you, right. Actually. Obviously, I watched this last night before we recorded this. That's the last one again.
I did not.
I have taken it differently because I think it's the whole, and it probably wasn't made clear, which again comes down to the bad writing, is that the trilogy is all about these two parts of the Force coming together, and they had to end with only one of them being alive, because it's one of those situations of one can't live while the other one survives. At some point they have to come together and become the one piece of the Force that they are, and they can't survive in these two different bodies because obviously they start quite far apart. They have no idea who they are, and just slowly between in the films they come closer and closer and closer, and at the end they become one person.
Right. I would be on your side here if the writing reflected that, but I don't think the writing did.
I think the problem is that it wasn't made clear.
Yeah. In my mind,
in the storytelling,
Star Wars is a story of balance. There's got to be, to have good, to have the Jedi, there's got to be the Sith. So to kill the only remaining Sith sort of makes it an imbalanced universe. And that sort of, I guess that was the point. It was meant to be the
Rey,
end. Like it's meant to be the end of the Star Wars.
You can just argue that Rey becomes that balanced person because she has both sides of them in her now.
Yeah, but they didn't really reflect that, did they? It's not like it's not like his essence went into her, other than fucking
storytelling. But none of this is made clear.
Yeah. other than some saliva, I don't think much of his essence went into her. So, like, I don't really, it just comes back to poor writing. There's not much more we can do. They should have made it more clear, and they didn't, and that's their fault. We'll never know unless they say exactly what the point was. But I don't think he should have died. Yeah. So are you gonna say Rise of Skywalker is your favorite then?
Yeah, I think I will. I'll be controversial.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I can see it. It was when I watched it, it was an enjoyable movie, so I can't disagree. But I do think Rogue One's the best of the new movies, just for that last third. So yeah, I think we need to do favorite character. That's the one thing we need to do. I'm gonna say favorite character out of just the sequel trilogies because I don't want to say Darth Vader again, just because he was in a few scenes in Rogue One. So out of the new characters, who was your favorite?
I have two.
Okay.
And the only reason one isn't my favorite is because they only feature in one film.
Okay.
Which I know I argued early on that if it's a good person, then normally the character is all three, but it's because it's a character in Rogue One, which is K2SO, the droid.
Ah, yeah.
I really like the droid in that film.
Played by Alan Tudyk, isn't it?
I can't remember off the top of my
head. I think so.
Yeah, I really like that character. But also with I don't think it's so much the character. I think it's more. I think Adam Driver just played Kylo Ren really well, so I do like that character.
I am 100% on your side because mine's Kylo Ren. While they did, it was different to Vader. It was like childish Vader. You know, he had no remorse at times, but he had a redemption arc. He was childish at times and just trashed places, but he was an interesting character, and I'm going to blame the writers for anything bad that came with him. You know, I liked what he was, and he was the best of the new characters. So.
And it's once again my recurring theme of wanting to know more of that. We didn't get a lot of the Knights of Ren stuff that I'd have liked to have had more of that backstory of how the Knights of Ren became and him surrounding that.
Yeah, I agree. So is that anything else to say, or?
I think we're done.
We may do a ranking of every Star Wars movie. We'll see. That'll be for a later podcast though. But yeah, it's been fun for the past hour and a half we've sat here.
One thing that would have made the sequels a lot better is if Darth Jar Jar was a real thing.
Darth Jar Jar. That's it. Book it, Disney. Darth Jar Jar.
That was a letdown. The theory of Darth Jar Jar never came.
It should have been. It would have made the movies way better. Just think about it. Darth Jar Jar was behind it all along. He was behind Snoke. But yeah, that's it. I think it's been nice. Enjoy anything Star Wars related. Watch Clone Wars. It's a very good show. If you haven't seen it, watch The Mandalorian. We haven't.
But most importantly, watch our other podcast episodes because they're better than Star Wars.
That was where I was leading up to. Yes, watch us every second of your life.